I came to Ottawa this morning from my home province of Nova Scotia, where our communities are literally on fire. Thousands upon thousands of families have been displaced from their homes. Hundreds are watching as their homes may be turned into ashes. 8 months ago, Hurricane Fiona damaged our communities beyond measure, displacing not just homes, but sweeping people out to sea in some instances. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are peddling policies that they know will increase the level of pollution.
Look in the eyes.
These severe weather
Look
events.
in the eyes.
We have one planet, Mr. Speaker. It is my home. It is yours. I will not stand idly by and watch it burn.
The honourable member.
Can you imagine? Let me just.
This morning from my home province of
Let me
Nova
pause
Scotia,
this.
where our communities are.
The eyes. First of all, he looks like the brother from Step Brothers, not Will Ferrell's brother. He looks like John C. Reilly's brother from Step Brothers. That's a compliment, actually. You know what? Before I even go on, let me just make sure audio is good. I'm in a very, very temporary studio that I don't like, but I might be here all summer. Is the audio good? Before I go on with my rant, people. Before I even go on, I'm going to make sure that we're good on locals, good on Rumble. Oh, son of a bee sting. The heck is going on here? Refresh this. Okay, we're live on Rumble. That's good. Go to locals. We're good on locals, and everyone says good, good. All right. I forgot to warn you about gag reflexes. I was going to start with Justin Trudeau today, but I said, no, forget it. I'm going to start with what's going on in Nova Scotia, because as politically outrageous as it is and politically atrocious as it is, it's a very, very serious thing. I got a buddy, an internet buddy who I've met, who's been on the channel, Chet Chisholm, who's out in Nova Scotia, sensitizing me to how serious what's going on is, in fact, in Nova Scotia, although anybody paying attention probably already knows this. If you don't know, forest fires, out of control, a number of them in Nova Scotia, the worst in decades. This is Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, Sean Fraser, Liberal MP. Never let a good crisis go to waste, people, and we're going to get into it in a second. He's coming to Parliament from Nova Scotia, and this is what he has to say about it.
I came to Ottawa this morning from my home province of Nova Scotia, where our communities are literally on fire.
They are.
Thousands upon thousands of families have been displaced from their homes.
They have.
Hundreds are watching as their homes may be turned into ashes.
They are.
8 months ago, Hurricane Fiona damaged our communities beyond measure, displacing not just homes, but sweeping people out to sea in some.
Damaging communities beyond measure, and people had to fundraise for money to rebuild from that, while Canada fires unvaccinated firefighters, healthcare workers, and others, ships billions of dollars out to fund foreign conflict. And when we have a crisis here, our government is barely able to deal with it.
Some instances. Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives are peddling policies that they know will increase the level of pollution that is causing these severe weather events.
The level of pollution that will increase these severe weather events. Can you imagine the audacity, the intellectual ignorance and naivety it takes to say there was a hurricane last year, it was a bad one. Humans did that. The amazing thing is, I was listening to a podcast as I drove back to Canada from Florida, long bloody drive. The Fall of the Roman Empire by Nick Holmes. I'm going to get into it in a bit. One of the amazing hypotheses that Nick Holmes explored in one of the chapters to account for the fall of the Roman Empire was climate change, or at least shifting climates. In 300 AD, before the Industrial Revolution, there might have been natural factors at play that accounted for more or less rainfall in certain parts of the world, which might have accounted for hardships, flooding, droughts back 300 AD. Tried to loosely tie it to deforestation, but quite clearly, not easily attributable events back, 300 AD to man-caused climate change. This guy here is now talking about climate change causing the hurricane, climate change causing the forest fires. I had to pull it up because I wasn't sure. Let me get the graph, because someone had tweeted something very interesting. It was in response to a tweet talking about. You know what? I'll just go here. I'll bring up my Twitter feed. It was in response to what's causing these wildfires. Someone posted a graph. Look at this. In response to this very same speech, Mr. Surveillance, what a disgrace that politicians who give themselves the power to censor misinformation are the ones dishing it out. Sean Fraser's own government data shows Canadian wildfires have both decreased in numbers and intensity over the past half century. Details, Mr. Surveillance. I don't know if this graph is true, accurate, and I'm reluctant to trust screen grabs from the interwebs. But look at 2020, how the 2020 wildfires are virtually nil. It's a very interesting observation. Someone else astutely pointed out, why was 2020 such a low outlier? Oh yeah, people were in lockdowns, which got me looking. What typically are the causes of most wildfires? Well, in the States, and I suspect it's roughly the same in Canada, nearly 85% of wildland fires in the United States are caused by humans. Now, this is a very inconvenient fact that people are going to have to work their way around or intellectualize their way out of. And I can steelman how they're going to do that. Sure, we've always had problems in wildfires. They're always 85% of them are caused by humans, but now they're so much worse when humans cause them because of climate change. That's going to be the argument. How are you going to disprove that? Well, you might have to show graphs showing that wildfires have decreased both in number and intensity over the last little while. You might. Or there might simply be no way of doing it. There might simply be no way of walking out of the foregone conclusion that CO2 emissions, carbon emissions, are leading to hurricanes in Nova Scotia and Florida, wildfires in California and Nova Scotia. You know what might also have something to do with it? And I'm still waiting for an answer from Fraser, but I doubt I'll get it. Did Nova Scotia fire any unvaccinated firefighters? Like, I am wondering. I don't know that it's a cause of or an exacerbating factor to all of this, but are they having a shortage of firefighters? I know British Columbia fired unvaccinated firefighters. I know British Columbia did it. I suspect it was the same in Nova Scotia because they went hog wild on terminating unvaccinated federal employees as well. It's an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing how it's called fractal wrongness. Everything that someone does at every step of the way is the wrong thing. To combat a virus, lockdowns, maritime bubbles, restrictions on interprovincial travel among citizens, as though that's how you can combat a virus. Curfews, even though there's no science to support curfews to combat a virus. Then you fire the unvaccinated healthcare workers. And then you say, holy crap, we've got a big problem now. We don't have enough healthcare workers. We better curfew lockdown more because our hospitals are overrun because we fired all of the unvaccinated healthcare workers in the face of a jibby jab that we now know does not prevent transmitting the virus, has a 3 in 10,000 risk of adverse events by the Canadians' own statistics. Nova Scotia, actually, was an article out of Nova Scotia. Article out of Nova Scotia when they said, have an adverse reaction from the jab. Don't worry, people. We got your ambulance fee covered. Let me just get my camera. If you have to be rushed to the hospital because you have an adverse reaction, don't worry. We'll cover your ambulance fee. That's how generous we are. Fire unvaccinated healthcare workers, fire unvaccinated firefighters. By the way, these fires that are burning out of control in Nova Scotia, a number of them have in fact already been attributed to arson or man-made fire starting. Whether or not it's arson, we'll find out in due time. Oh yeah, by the way, that guy that's immediately attributing the hurricane of last year, the forest fires now, climate change. Everybody know who Sean Fraser is? Oh no, you don't. Oh. Do the exercise, people. Do the exercise. Google the name and WEF and see what comes up. Now, full disclosure, everybody, we've talked about this a number of times. It's not because someone has a bio on the landing page of the WEF that it shows any affiliation with the WEF. Some landing pages are just the picture and the name. Others, like Chrystia Freeland, show how she is on the board of trustees of the WEF. This is Sean Fraser's bio on the WEF. Take it for what it's worth. Maybe he doesn't want this up there. He has nothing to do with the WEF, and he's fighting tooth and nail to make them take down his very, very well-drafted bio. Sean Simon Andrew Fraser is Canada's Minister of Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship, and has served as the Member of Parliament for Central Nova Scotia since 2015. As Canada's Minister of Immigration, he is currently leading Canada's efforts to boost immigration levels to help drive the post-pandemic economic recovery, and he is responsible for the federal government's initiatives that offer safe haven to displaced persons fleeing Afghanistan and Ukraine. His previous work as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister included contributions to the Government of Canada's economic response to COVID-19, during which time he served as a primary spokesperson for the federal government in Parliament on fiscal and economic matters. He also helped inform the federal government's environmental policy during his term as Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Environment and Climate Change. Simon Fraser has a very, very wonderful, eloquent bio on the WEF. Getting up in Parliament of Canada, immediately attributing the wildfires in Nova Scotia to climate change, the hurricane from last year to climate change, while they are now implementing some sort of lockdown in Nova Scotia, where, I don't know if you know this, let me see if I can pull up an article. People are no longer allowed going out into the woods. They're not allowed fishing. They're not allowed camping outside. They're not allowed going on the hiking trails. All of Nova Scotia's natural resources are now shut down to the public. I brought this up. It's a CBC article. Cripe almighty, I didn't bring it up. Well, you'll just have to take my word for it. Now, don't take my word for it. Let's pull it up. Nova Scotia has now implemented basically a ban on going outside to enjoy the wildlife. Nova Scotia wildfires, CBC prohibition. Hold on. There we go. I'm a little on the fence about this, but we've talked about climate lockdowns. Nova Scotia implements province-wide ban on travel activity in woods due to wildfires. Growing Shelburne County fire has prompted evacuation of more than 1,000 homes. The Nova Scotia government has implemented a province-wide ban on all activity and travel within the province's woods as crews continue to battle multiple fires. Now, I say I'm on the fence about this because I do appreciate that it's a natural disaster right now that requires coordination and emergency responses to various areas. I'm also on the fence about this because we talked about the incoming climate change lockdowns, climate crisis bans on travel, and we're seeing it now in real time. The only question is going to be whether or not a province-wide ban on any travel into the woodlands is justified given the current wildfires. We talked about it, and we're seeing it in real time, in real life. Everything the government has done has contributed to this. Everything they've done along the way has been a contributing factor to exacerbating this problem. And now what are they doing? Lockdowns. Can't go out into the woods. And I appreciate you have to have firefighters who have to be able to get to the fires. You have planes coming, dumping stuff, picking up water from lakes. I'm not sure under this circumstance that I've taken a hard position one way or the other. But the warnings were there 3 years ago, and the reality is occurring now. This is basically a climate change, climate crisis lockdown. It might be a state of emergency lockdown, which there have been and will continue to be, and nobody can really complain about those or deny the necessity. It might also just be a political scoring points opportunity. It might just be the time to say, hey, look, people, this is what we can do now. And so if we say that there's a smog crisis, lockdown, don't go out of your houses. It might be purely punitive. Don't go along with our climate change. We have the ability to lock you down. One thing is for certain, however, the forest fires that are burning out of control. There are rumorings, and there are a little bit more than rumorings, that some of them are arson related or at the very least man-caused, human-caused. The WEF man, who may or may not have anything to do with the WEF, despite his very eloquent bio on the website, immediately jumping on this, politicizing it, using it to rail against the Conservatives for not implementing policy change that's going to stop these forest fires, stop these hurricanes. And yes, people, I appreciate the potential accusation of hashtag confession to projection, that I am now taking their politicization and politicizing it to criticize the Liberals. Here's the difference. There's a difference between politicizing a natural event or a crisis and politicizing the politicizing to that natural event or that crisis. That's the difference if I want to justify my own behavior to myself. Okay, people, that's what's going on in Canada, at least for now. going to get into a few more things as we get along here, just make sure that everything is going along smooth here. I feel naked. I feel out of place. I feel out of my beautiful studio office. I'm like going old school. Who remembers the Amazing Lucas back in the olden days when the Amazing Lucas used to be up against a white backdrop? The only thing I don't like about this is that there's a sharp headlight coming down that's highlighting the bulbousness and the shininess of my forehead and the my nose. If we're being honest here. Okay. Good morning. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Canada. Good morning, West Coast. Good evening, England. Before I get into, we got so much. First of all, I am going to give, whether he wanted it or not, I'm going to give Nick Holmes, the author of the podcast series. I listened to about 8 hours of this yesterday, The Fall of the Roman Empire, because I was trying to genuinely and truly appreciate the similarities between what has historically been described as, what has historically been described as the similarities between what we're seeing in the West now and how the Roman Empire came to an end. And I had to understand it. And lucky me, I had a 24-hour drive from Florida to Montreal. Not so lucky for my kid who's sitting in the back. He's smarter, whether or not he appreciates it. He was listening to it in his sleep. I listened to it. I'm going to talk about that in a second. Before that, you may have noticed this stream had a nice little box in the corner. It says, this video contains a paid promotion, because it does. Now, actually, before I even get into the paid promotion, let's just see. This is going to be public consensus. I have been using this product on my face, not because I care about my physical appearance, period. I do not care about my physical appearance. Why? I care about what my body looks like, but that's not because I like looking good without a shirt. It's because I like being healthy, and a surefire way to have a good indication that you're healthy is to have muscles, is to be fit, etc., etc. I don't care about what my face looks like. I care about my hair, but that's a different story. Now, I'm asking you this because I've been using the product. And remember at one point I said, do you see bags under my eyes? Do the bags under my eyes look better, worse, or the same? That's the question. And while you all hypothesize on the answer, I'm going to bring up today's sponsor. I don't care what I look like, but I know that some people do. I mean, makeup and skin care product industry is a big industry for a reason. People like looking good. People like looking young. I don't care. You know, the wrinkle in my forehead is a wrinkle, a grimace of reality, as I like to say it. But people care about what they look like. Some people actually have facial work done. They do things to their faces. They travel to far off countries to have work done. They inject toxins into their face to smooth out the wrinkles. I wouldn't do it. I won't do it. I don't judge the people who do it, but I don't understand that level of vanity, I guess. But some people like looking young, smooth-faced, just as long as you don't end up looking like the Hollywood actresses and actors who have mangled their faces irreparably. Simon Cowell, Madonna, just to name some where they've done the work and it doesn't look right at the end of the day. And then, it's not okay, whatever. Genucel, by the way, so I've been using that retinol stuff under the skin. Dr. Drew recommends it, sponsors it as well. And when he did it, it's like, okay, I'm going to use it. I'll see what happens. If my face looks better, now you know why. If it doesn't, now you know why. I think it does, though. What I love about this company is I spent some time on the phone again with the company before agreeing to sponsor it, before allowing them to sponsor the channel. The story of the company is amazing. An Egyptian pharmacist comes to America, I think it was New Jersey, opens up his pharmacy, makes his own skin products, his own proprietary blend, or however it works, and then gives it out to a few clients. And then a few clients say, this is amazing stuff. They turn into more clients. And lo and behold, a business is born out of a product that works so well. People literally came to him and said, we need more of this. Give us your proprietary blend of skin smoothing products. I'll read a real review because they've asked me to read a real review. I absolutely love Genucel. My skin feels so good, tighter, younger with a more even tone. And I only used it for a week. My advice for everyone, take a picture before. Well, my face is on the internet. The product is amazing. It's an American product made in America. They sponsor the New Jersey Devils. And people love it. People vouch for it. I've put it on not because I care to see the results, but I'm curious to see the results. If you go to genucel.com, promo code VIVA, you'll get 70% off the most popular package, which is the one you're looking at right there. And it's good stuff. That is all. Genucel.com, promo code Viva. Look at my face. Little Florida sun also does wonders. Looking tight, Viva. I do the push-ups, A, so that I can defend myself, and B, so that I can run real fast, which is a form of defense, and C, if I don't exercise, I go crazy. Okay, so that's it. We're going to go to Rumble in a few minutes. Genucel, thank you. Let me put out the Rumble link right here, and then we're going to get into a couple of subjects. We're going to talk about the fall of the Roman Empire. I am not a professor. I have no expertise. I say that I have a kindergarten level understanding. I say that after having listened to 8.5 hours of podcasts about the fall of the Roman Empire, episode by episode. Now, full disclosure, when I started this podcast, I thought there was only one. And I listened to it. Like, I'm not really paying much attention to what I'm looking at. I play the podcast and I'm driving. I was like, oh, great. And it ends. I was like, what the heck? And then I look, oh, hold on. 10 more episodes. No, there's not 17 episodes. 10. There are 62 episodes. Nick Holmes doesn't just break down the fall of the Roman Empire. He dissects it down to the Planck level. If anybody doesn't know what the Planck level is, Planck is the smallest size material on Earth. He breaks it down to a level of detail that I did not need to know, and that if I retain 10% of it, I will consider myself lucky. I'm driving from Florida to Canada for the summer, see my family, see my mother-in-law, my parents. They also look good. They look good because they look younger than they did the last time I saw them, despite being too old. You can't. They're too old. So I'm listening to the fall of the Roman Empire. And my bottom line takeaways from it are this. First of all, everybody should listen to it. It's a masterclass in the history of the Roman Empire. Excuse me. I think some elements of it might be controversial, in as much as there can be controversial takes on the fall of the Roman Empire. What's amazing about the fall of the Roman Empire, observations from Nick Holmes, is that we refer to or generally perceive the Roman Republic to have been a republic. And one of Nick Holmes' hypotheses is that the Roman Republic was never really a true republic, in that, the senators, people would vote on their senators, but they would be basically handpicked. The amount of people who could vote back in the day amounts to like a small percentage of the population. So you have a small percentage of the population voting on people who are handpicked by the oligarchy of sorts. So you're voting on the handpicked candidates. It looks like democracy. It looks like a republic, but it might have been more of an oligarchy. It was very interesting because I saw a similarity there. What ended up being the fall of the Roman Empire: internal fighting, expanding too far, conquering too much. And in the age of the conquest, when they were going out conquering the entire world, the revenues were magnificent. They would go conquer a land and plunder it, pillage it, take all the gold, take all the resources. So they had amazing income for the longest period of time. And then at some point in time, once you've conquered the world, the income decreases and you have to start taxing a lot. And some people don't like taxes. And some people don't want to pay taxes to a centralized, far-off government. Then you expand too much. You have no new income coming in from conquering new lands, conquest, but you have to pay a military. And if you don't pay the military doesn't act quite as loyally. You don't necessarily have the forces to protect what you've already conquered. There was more. When the training of the military becomes secondary, when other issues become more important than performance of the military, well, then you start losing to battles to people that you shouldn't be losing battles to nations that you shouldn't be losing battles to. Expand too much, revenue not coming in, taxing too much, untrained military or poorly trained military. Then you start hiring mercenaries. And there's very, very, very stark similarities between the rise and fall of the Roman Empire and what we see going on in the West right now. I didn't really sense as much of the ideological stuff as I was looking for in Nick's breakdown. But it was fascinating to listen to. Hopefully I can get... Did I have my camera moving again? It's not. Hopefully I can get Nick on so that I can flesh out some of my basic understandings of the similarities, but fascinating. Oh, yeah, and crossing the Rubicon. Does everybody understand the origins of that expression? Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River. It was to conquer I forget who it was exactly, but to conquer or to fight with that with which, I'm going to be so ignorant because I forgot who they were fighting or who he was going to conquer, was never supposed to cross the Rubicon. It said, you will all be basically damned to hell if you cross the Rubicon. So the Rubicon, crossing the Rubicon River became known for crossing a step that you can never come back on, performing an irreversible action. What did I find was crossing the Rubicon in modern times? The two bullshit impeachments of Donald Trump. The Russiagate hoax was another Rubicon that was crossed. Once you cross that Rubicon, I don't know that there's a coming back from that. I dare say the January 6th Fedsurrection is another Rubicon river that has been crossed. Once you understand crossing the Rubicon, the origins of the expression, I'll never look at a Jeep Rubicon again the same way, but things make a lot more sense. Okay, 25 minutes in, I haven't even gotten to the stories yet. So Nova Scotia is burning, liberal politicians exploiting it, and most wildfires, 85% caused by humans. Whether or not they're exacerbated by climate change, that argument will be made. Whether or not they're exacerbated by human activity, not proper deforesting, not clearing up after hurricanes of last year might be an interesting, with the hurricane of Nova Scotia of last year, there might have been a lot of dead wood that had fallen on the ground that might exacerbate this fire that might have been started by humans. Yeah, that's it. Okay, do we want to start? We'll do one story here before we move on over to Rumble, and then before we move on over to locals exclusively. I wanted to bring up this article here. This article is going to blow your mind. This is a controversial topic, people, because the media has already said that, this idea of the Great Reset is a racist, white nationalist, far-right extremist notion that has been invoked by people to carry out egregious acts of violence. The Buffalo shooter, apparently in his manifesto, talked about this thing called the Great Replacement. The idea, as the media depicts it, of the Great Replacement is a political move to replace white America, white Westerners, with non-white Westerners. And so it has led, allegedly, some people to commit horrendous acts of violence in protest. It's in their manifestos. And the media says this theory is a conspiracy theory that is based and rooted in white nationalism, far-right extremism, et cetera, et cetera. That's how the media demonizes it, so that no discussion can be had about what is not a conspiracy theory, but what is actual policy, at least in Canada. And the caveat to it is that it's not based in race. That much I agree with. The idea of the media depicting it as a racist theory is the straw man sort of red herring to demonize people out of talking about it. It isn't a racist theory. It's a political theory, and I'll go one step further and say it's not a political theory, it's a political strategy. And in case you had any doubts, I stumbled across this today on Twitter. It's a 2-day-old article. This is from the Globe and Mail. We're going to read this, and then we're going to understand what it says and the true consequences of what is being put forward in this article. The Globe and Mail. Canada on track for 100 million population, but public support can't be taken for granted. Century Initiative CEO. What do we have here? In the title, you have persuasion that the majority of Canadians are already on board with, happy with, support the idea of the country more than doubling in population in what period of time? By the turn of the century. Canada right now has 36 million people living in it. This article is putting forward the policy through which Canada's population will more than double in 77 years. We're going to reach, apparently, more than 100 million in Canada by the year 2100. How? Not through childbirth, not through natural growth, and you're going to see why in a second, but just understand that the header of this article is persuading people into believing that the majority of Canadians are okay with the idea of the population of the country more than doubling by the turn of the century. And when you find out how this population is going to more than double, they still want you to believe Canadians are okay with it so that you are lulled into supporting it because, after all, most Canadians support it. The chief executive of the Century Initiative, I have to look this company up after we do this, says Canada, quote, has reached the point of no return when it comes to welcoming more immigrants, as its modeling shows Canada is on track to more than double its population to at least 100 million by the turn of the century. What population, what nation historically took in large amounts of people and subsequently fell? Oh, I forgot to mention that part of the fall of the Roman Empire was allowing, I think they called them Goths, Vandals, allowing Goths and Vandals, it might have been more the Goths, to join the Roman Empire but not pledge a sort of allegiance to it. Come in and live in the country without actually being Roman. And then what happened? The sacking of Rome, not twice, I think, but 3 times, at least twice. More than double the population within 75 years. But Lisa Lalonde warned that existing high levels of public support for increasing immigration cannot be taken for granted. That's a loaded observation right there. Warned that the existing high levels of public support, if public opinion shifts on immigration, policy will shift, and ultimately that will be detrimental to the future of the country. Oh, okay. The Century Initiative, a non-profit lobby group, wants to see Canada's population grow from 39.5 million to 100 million by 2100. Ms. Lalonde says the investment is needed to address problems such as, Ms. Lalonde says more investment is needed to address problems such as housing shortages so Canada grows well and can accommodate more people. Canada is currently euthanizing record numbers of Canadians because they can't accommodate the population they already have. Where do you think this money comes from? Canada can barely take care of Nova Scotia as it currently stands. It can barely take care of the hurricane from last year. It can barely take care of its existing healthcare system. You know what would be really good for the healthcare system? Double the population in 75 years. Current levels of high immigration and government policy decisions, such as making it easier for foreign students to get permanent residence, are putting Canada on track for the first time to meet or even surpass its target. Okay, listen to this. This statistic is going to blow your mind. Canada had record population growth of 700,000 people in 2021 to 2022, with immigration accounting for 94%. Do you remember when the statistics were coming out and saying immigration out of Canada was at the 25-year high? That was 2021, 2022. And yet Justin Trudeau and the Liberals were saying Canada is flourishing. Canada is doing so well. Record numbers of people are emigrating, moving to Canada. Population growth is skyrocketing. I'm gonna bring down the article. There's a way where both of those statements can be true at the same time. It's just that one happens to result in the destruction of Canada as it currently stands. Emigration out of Canada is at a quarter of a century high if it hasn't gotten worse in the last year. How does the population continue to grow then? Well, the population grew nearly a million. Let's just say 750,000. 94% of that is immigration. So while Canada, for whatever the reason, has decided to be a parasite of sorts off political discourse in the USA as relates to Dobbs and abortion and all that stuff, while Canada has decided to import that debate, which doesn't exist in Canada, make abortion a political litmus test, even though Canada is the only nation in the world with absolutely no criminal prohibitions on abortion. Apparently, despite having no criminal prohibitions on abortion in Canada, it's still not accessible enough. And Justin Trudeau and his Liberals have to import the abortion debate from the United States and make it a Canadian political issue. So while they promote abortion, while they massively increase euthanasia of Canadians, expand it to the mentally ill, want to expand it to minors, expand it to people who are not critically ill, while polls show that Canadians support euthanasia if homelessness and poverty are the motivating factors, why isn't the population growing? Geez, it's a conundrum wrapped in an enigma, wrapped in a paradox. Why isn't the population growing when all that our government does is promote policies of death? And whether or not you believe in abortion as a policy for a certain window of period of time, it's important to understand what it is. People call it reproductive rights. Even if you support the idea of abortion, even if you're not morally in support of it, but you believe it's like one of those ugly evils that you have to tolerate, but only for a limited window, opportunity, period of time. Call it what it is. Promoting abortion, promoting euthanasia, and the population doesn't grow. What's the best way to counter that? massive immigration, so much that 94% of the record growth comes from immigration. Do you know what happens if a population doubles within 75 years due to immigration? You don't have a country anymore. And it's not a question of anti-immigration. Immigration has always been, for the West, the traditional method of growth. The West has always been a place for immigrants to come seeking a better life. At some point, however, just to go back to the analogy, if Justin Trudeau wants to be the bon père de famille, the good father, if you can't take care of your existing children, it's reckless to have more. And for people who say that the great replacement theory is a racist theory, okay, take out the word great. It's not about replacing white Westerners. It's just a question of politically replacing them. What better way to survive terrible policy? What better way to get reelected through policy that current citizens don't support because it's not in their best interest, because you're not actually looking after them, you're looking after a potential future generation. What better way to get the population to swallow the unswallowable than by just replacing their vote, diluting their vote, importing political support? I agree. The replacement theory could be racist if one were to think it was racially targeted. The only thing is, it's racist to even think that, because there are white, black, Chinese, Asian, Native Canadians. There are white, black, Chinese Americans. There are Americans of all races, creeds, religions, gender, sexual orientations, and whatever. You're importing and doubling a population to dilute the citizens' vote currently affects everybody, not just one race. But to say that the replacement theory is a conspiracy theory, that article is detailing it as policy. It's not conspiracy theory. It is political strategy. It's political strategy, and they're telling it to you to your face. 94% of the record growth for 2021, 2022 is immigration. That just means you've opened up your borders to offset the fact that the tax-paying citizens of the country are leaving in droves. And it's a way to fabricate success out of failure. I found it shocking. And then when I was looking up articles on the Great Replacement, which people said was conspiracy theory, and all the articles that I do see, ADL, was it the ACLU, Wikipedia, referring to the Buffalo shooter, the Great Replacement as a racist conspiracy theory, alt-right, far-right, white nationalist conspiracy theory. Yeah, if you decide to view what this policy entails as racially motivated, I could see how someone would think it's racially motivated, but it's not. It's politically motivated. Because if you can't earn your votes locally, import your support through immigration. Alrighty, let's see here. Ned Toons Rock says, Blue Jays can't win a game with balls. How are they going to? All right, that's the intro, people. Let's go over to Rumble. And we're going to talk about the I love Big Brother. Just got an article, not an article. I just got an email that I have to shut down my email because I get emails while I'm streaming and they distract me. Okay, everybody, head on over to Rumble. Have I forgotten? We're good. Head on over to Rumble. We're gonna take this party over to Rumble, over to Locals. Locals looks good. Good. Okay. So that's it, by the way. Don't call it the Great Replacement. It's just political replacement. Although it is quite ironic, you have the Great Reset, the Great Replacement. The Great Reset conspiracy theory doesn't exist. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. There's a website. They have a bullet point PowerPoint presentation at the World Economic Forum. I mean, once upon a time, the World Economic Forum was conspiracy theory. You got your Great Replacement, you got your Great Reset, and their racist conspiracy theories, except, yeah, you got that 2030 agenda at the WEF. Yeah, you got it, except they want to double the population of Canada through immigration within 75 years. Can you imagine that? 60 million new arrivals, not natural population growth. What can that do to the fabric of a society? I guess we'll see. All right, ending on YouTube, and we're going to go over to Rumble. Viva la Rumble. What am I doing? Don't open the window. Close the window. Okay, ending on YouTube now. 3, 2, 1. Peace out, peeps.